Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. This is the third in 3 presentations that Dr. Ann Selzer has been giving. Yesterday she talked to the communication department about the value of communication in a lifelong career. And last night she talked about her work as a pollster for the Des Moines Register and the work that she did in the recent caucuses. And how that was a very interesting, kind of surprising thing. Well, we have many different departments who joined together to bring in Dr. Selzer, and I want to thank those departments. I want to start off by thanking the Gordon Ford College of Business and the Potter College of Arts and Letters for really taking leadership on supporting this whole event. And also, we've had a number of departments who joined together: communication, sociology, political science, the Institute for Citizenship and Social Responsibility, Gender and Women's Studies, Journalism and Broadcasting, and Gender and Women's Studies was in particular supported by this event, as was the Gordon Ford College of Business. So it's my honor to introduce Dr. Selzer. She is the first of 3 lecturers who's going to be speaking with us this semester in a series called Above and Beyond Applied Communication Research. The next 2 folks, we have Mitty Carey, who's a doctoral candidate at the University of Memphis. February 27 will be talking to us about the rhetoric of a woman called Prathia Hall, and kind of a interesting person who is not terribly well known in civil rights, but deserves to be better known. That's why Mitty is working with her. And the third person who's coming, I think you'll be very interested to hear. His name is Joseph Walther, Joe Walther. He's a professor at Michigan State. He is a professor of computer-mediated communication, and he does work on social media, Facebook. He's been working on computer-mediated communication for the past 20 years. And one of the very first in the discipline to say, you know what? Technology is just another tool that human beings will use to build communicative relationships with one another. And he was saying that at a time when many people in the communication discipline were saying, it's all over, people just be talking on computer and they won't be talking face-to-face anymore. So it'll be interesting. But let me get back to Dr. Selzer, the point of the day. Dr. Selzer's undergraduate degree was in speech and drama, and she earned that with distinction at the University of Kansas. Then at the University of Iowa, Dr. Selzer earned both a master's degree and a PhD in communication theory and research. And since then, Dr. Selzer has built a distinguished career in strategic public opinion research, where she connects clients with audiences. And she talked about that last night, about how the audience point of view grows naturally out of her communication background. Highlights of Dr. Selzer's career include directing the influential Iowa poll for the Des Moines Register, and the prestigious Bloomberg National News Poll and the Bloomberg Global Poll for Bloomberg News. In addition, she's consulted with Minneapolis Star Tribune, Detroit Free Press, Better Homes and Gardens, Iowa State University, Marquette University, Sony, and Intuit. If you watched the news before the recent Iowa caucuses, you might have seen Dr. Selzer. She's been on the PBS NewsHour, CBS Evening News, MSNBC, and in addition was interviewed by Swiss Television and the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation and the Japanese press. In 2011, Dr. Selzer was awarded the Woman Business Owner of the Year award by the Business Record. Her successes in business have been hard fought and hard won. Here's a little thing about Dr. Selzer you should know that not too many people know. She has a tiara collection. She brought it along. So please join me in welcoming Dr. J. Ann Selzer for a brief presentation followed by question and answers on women and work. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. That was just I'm sorry, Dr. Stirk. That was a wonderful introduction. The comment about the tiara collection, I realized once I got here at my fully packed suitcase, I had intended to bring a tiara for this presentation. Exactly. And it came out of the, I was awarded last year the Outstanding Woman Business Owner of the Year by the Business Record in Des Moines, and it kind of caught me a little bit by surprise. Those awards tend to go to women who have been in business been visible in business a longer period of time than I have been visible. I've been in business a long time, but just not sort of as visible. Or people who have big shops and employ a lot of people, and I have a very small shop, small but mighty, we like to say. So I was kind of you know, trying to figure out how I would give the little acceptance speech that was thanking everybody for it. And I struggled with it and I struggled with it, and somebody said, you know, you're queen for a day. And I went, the scepter, there's the robe, there's the crown. So as I walked up to give my acceptance speech, I said, you know, I have struggled mightily with how to accept this award that you are honoring me with today, and I've decided to accept it. I pulled the big hunkin' tiara out of my bag, plopped it on my head and said, with enthusiasm. Because if you couldn't wear a tiara to that event, really, where could you? And today was another opportunity, and I just didn't get it done. So you'll just have to imagine big honking tiara on my head. You know, I'm here to kind of talk about my story in business, and it's odd for me to spend time talking about me, because I know from communication that the most powerful word is you. So when I talk to clients, I'm always talking about you to them. The other powerful word is yes. So two Y words. Yes. All by itself. You don't have to say more if somebody asks you for something, and you can just say yes. Very powerful. That actually, I've always known it because it's kind of a tenet of good marketing. But Tina Fey, in her book Bossy Pants, if you've not read it, it says how important that is in improv. That what you want your partner to be saying, when you say, I am a monster from the deep of the sea, you don't want them to say, no, you're not. You want them to say, yes. In fact, you want them to say yes, and you are covered with algae and blah, blah, blah. I mean, you have to kind of be there. But I find very powerful as clients are asking me for things that the most important thing I can say first is yes. And then we can talk about how to get it done. But it's very easy to say, well, blah, blah, and begin with all of the caveats. And if you begin with yes, good things start to happen. So that's a little bit of a digression, starting from the word you. And I do want to get to you. But I thought with this little talk this morning, I'd give you some launching points, some things that maybe spark with you, and we can come back to the question and answer session. But I wanted to tell you a little bit about how I got here today. Because at one point, I was you, sitting at that table with only the skills you have, and built something that's become famous to some people, I suppose. So my career trajectory is one of the most linear that there ever has been. I knew from a young age that I liked data. I knew that I liked understanding how people think. And so I thought psychology. You know, I thought, okay, I'll be an experimental psychologist. And I took a lot of courses in psychology as an undergraduate because I really just liked, how do we learn, how do we know? So I was drawn to data, drawn to people. I thought from my first interpersonal communication class, that class was so good there couldn't possibly be a department in it. But I found out there was, kind of by accident. Nobody came and recruited me, but graduated with that. Knew I was going to go to graduate school. Spent a year between times in England studying sociolinguistics at the University of Reading. So I'm a language person, in case you haven't maybe gotten a little feel for that. I came back, wrote my dissertation, worked for a while as a jury consultant, and if you're interested in what that is from a language point of view, very interesting. Then I moved to Washington, D.C. and became an analyst for a public opinion research firm. I learned about a job opening at the Des Moines Register. I was ready to come back to Iowa. My degree, my PhD is from the University of Iowa, as Dr. Stirk said. And realized that this was an opportunity to build some visibility within the community. I was really running my own polling shop within the newspaper. Nobody else there did what I did. I had a big staff of we did everything internally. And so it was like running my own small business, but I didn't have to go and get clients. months. So it was a very good time to develop those management skills of how to actually get things done on budget, do all of those things without having to worry about the marketing side. But in the back of my head, I kind of thought, I want my own show. I think I could do that. So I built the J.N. Selzer Freedom Fund, because the most common reason that businesses fail is that they're undercapitalized. And mostly that means people don't have enough money to live on. And so they have to go find an employer because they can't make it on their own. So I wanted to be sure that I gave this the best shot I could. And I saved up enough mortgage payments for 2 years, enough money to pay my utilities, and enough money for Merry Maids. Figuring I could cover the rest. And you know, just as symbolically, that was important to me, that how am I going to launch this? And I never had to touch the J.N. Selzer Freedom Fund because we were able to start the business. And obviously I was not making nearly as much money as I had been making, but enough to sort of get by, eke it out. And if you can last 3 years, you now have repeat business, you now have referrals, and things are easier after that. The first 3 years are difficult, and I think people think the first 6 months might be difficult, but you really have to build, at least in my business, where we do it project by project by project. I didn't have people until much later on regular retainers, on regular contracts that we knew were sort of going to lay the groundwork there. Some of the things that I think have helped me be successful was, first of all, figuring out rather early on what kind of business person I wanted to be. And one of the early challenges you find out when you're feeling insecure and you want to please all your clients and you don't want to ever let them down is sometimes there's problems. And there's a big temptation to think they'll never know there was a problem. I can do this, I can finesse that, we can do this, everything will look fine, only I will know the problem. I can fix it, you know, I can spend the money to fix it. They don't ever need to know. And then I would go home that night, sleep on it, and come in the next day and call the client. Because I realized I didn't want to live that life. I didn't want to have all of that in the back of my mind, even if I succeeded in the client never knowing. And I talk about that period of time as my backbone hardening. That is, I figured out who I wanted to be. And I think for women, that's a very important challenge to tee up very directly. Who do I want to be? What is the life that I want to live? And be very clear with yourself about that, because there are going to be a lot of temptations to deviate along the way, and if you're solid, I think that helps. One of the things I also knew, and that's a piece of this, is that the best news I could ever give a client was the truth. That anything else, really, you know, if something were hedged one way or the other, then they're not playing on even ground. So when I've had clients who said, well, you know, we know how we want this to come out. We know what we want the answer to be. And I have two answers for that. One is I say, good, let's make it hard for you to get that answer. Because I want to be sure that's credible, especially if I had a client who was required by the state legislature to do a study of its membership to see where they should put the headquarters. And they had already put an offer on a building. So they knew what they wanted the answer to be. And I said, let's make it hard, because the legislatures don't trust you. That's why they've required you to do this. You want this to be beyond reproach. We don't want anybody to think you created this, you fabricated this out of nothing. The other answer I give when they say, we know how we want this to turn out, is say, you know, the price goes up. Because I'm done in business if anybody thinks that I skewed results, because that's what a client wants. So I think $2 million is my current rate for that. If you've got that, we can have a conversation. But short of that, I don't think so. But it guides me along the way. It sort of is a touchstone to come back to when you're making important decisions. And I think figuring out what those touchstones are, what that mosaic looks like for you, is important. One thing I had, and I struggled many times. I had very difficult bosses along the way. I had a year where I think I cried every day. It was just that hard. I did not give up, but I struggled every day. So I don't want you to think it must have been easy for her. It was not easy for me. But I had a little voice in the back of my head that said, you're pretty good. I'm pretty good. It didn't say I'm fabulous. It didn't say I'm better than anybody else. It didn't have to say that. All it had to say was I'm pretty good. And sometimes, and I think women maybe, have voices that say you stink, you're terrible, you're awful, you can't do anything. And it shows, it undercuts everything that you try to do. You need to cultivate that voice, and if it takes years in therapy, go do it, because if you don't have that voice, it's hard to take the next step and do the next thing. I developed an internal locus of control, and that's sort of what I'm saying to you, so that's a little bit of communication language there. But if I were to look at the world and say, if I'm any good, they will come to me. I don't have to do anything. They will come to me. I would not be standing here today. You have to have the confidence to go out and risk being turned down, being rejected. You've got to go and make the ask. So 4 years ago, almost exactly today, we had a big success with the Iowa poll in the 2008 caucuses, only because a lot of people thought our numbers were wrong and they had a horse in the race, and so I was vilified. They basically said, yes.
Can I just sharpen it? She was the only pollster to correctly predict Barack Obama was going to win in Iowa. Everyone else was predicting Clinton, right?
Yes, and within a half an hour of my poll being released, the Clinton campaign and the Edwards campaign came out and said her poll is flawed, she stinks, she's rotten, she should be fired. Not exactly, but you know, it felt like that to me. And so all I could do is sit and wait, and then we were perfect in terms of getting Obama by the margin he got, which was a handy margin, and getting Mike Huckabee on the Republican side. And so now I have a little bit of fame, a little bit of national exposure, and everybody said, oh, your phone is going to ring. Oh, people, this is going to be good business for you. And I'm sitting there going, I don't think that I can afford to wait. I should take this opportunity to think, who do I want to work with? Who do I want to translate this little bit of fame into something else? And I remember this very distinctly, standing in my living room thinking, Oprah needs a poll. The Oprah poll, can you imagine? But the Oprah poll, wouldn't that be fantastic? So I kind of go Oprah. And then I knew that Bloomberg News had had a polling relationship with the LA Times, and the LA Times was going to shut down their polling unit. And I had contacts that I sent a note to Al Hunt, who is the chief Washington correspondent for Bloomberg News, and said, should we talk? He said, I think we should. And so I went to Bloomberg and had a little chat, and he knows people that I know, and so that was helpful. But it took me having that meeting, I came back for another meeting, I came back, then they invited me in for a third meeting, and I thought, well, this is just going to be Al Hunt and me, and I walk in and here are 4 other people. At Bloomberg News, let me just pause to tell you a little bit about who they are. I know that the dean knows very well. Michael Bloomberg created this company. They sell financial information through a specialized terminal. So before there was an internet, there was a Bloomberg terminal that you could buy, or you could rent to be on your desk, which gives you financial information, analytic tools, all of these things. And people who have a terminal pay $20,000 a year. There are 300,000 of them worldwide. So I got out my little calculator, I go, well, that's $6 billion. That's how Michael Bloomberg got to be who he is. So what they do is sell intelligence, which is, for another time, for my talk yesterday, I talked a little bit about selling intelligence. But you know, they are a big deal operation. They are in lots of, and they want their headquarters in New York is built for shock and awe. There's a curved escalator going up there, these giant fish tanks. There's a wall that has every kind of soft drink and every kind of can available, up to and including diet ginger ale. Like, if you've got diet ginger ale, you've got everything, as far as I can tell. So I go into this meeting, and here are some people I didn't know to expect. I don't know who they are. They say their names rather quickly. I hadn't had an opportunity to prepare. If they have a business card, they don't have a title on it, so I don't know who's in this meeting. And we talk along about things, about how this might go. And one of them says to me, you know, we do this thing with our customers. It's not scientific, and we probably shouldn't be publishing it, but here's what we do. And I said, well, you know, to the extent that your customers would benefit from knowing the aggregated opinion of other customers, people who are like them on what's happening with global financial issues, you might have something of value if you did it properly. And I said, and to the extent that the rest of the world looks at Bloomberg customers as financial information elites, you might be sitting on a gold mine. And everybody around the table, you could just kind of see, I said, I got a little chill. Somebody goes, I did too. And so that kind of sealed the deal. Now I find out later that one of the people in the room is the editor-in-chief of Bloomberg News, the guy who built it from nothing. Matt Winkler is his name. He's sometimes referred to in the press as the tyrannical Matt Winkler. We get along great. And the chief content officer who had just come over from Time magazine, and so now they were in the process of buying Business Week, which is now Bloomberg Business Week. And these were the top people of Bloomberg News in the room, and I didn't know. And maybe that was good. Maybe that was good. But because I knew to go get it, and because I had prepared, things came together and worked out not by accident, by design. So I think that that's something that women sometimes think, if I'm good enough, people will come to me. They will pluck me out and move me up. It doesn't happen that way. You make your own success. And you're going to have some failures along the way. So just because you try and fail, that's not the end of the story. You need to keep trying. You need to keep going. I thought I would just sort of talk just briefly about the challenges I think women face in a male-dominated world. And the first is presenting with confidence, and you can kind of hear that I've been talking about that all along. That is finding that voice that you're comfortable with, and then doing the preparation so that you're ready. And one of the things, this is going to sound arrogant, but so brace yourselves. One of the things that is one of my best tricks in my bag is I have a good brain. You don't hear very women say, I've got a really good brain. But what I know about my brain is that in the middle of the night, I will remember something that I've let drop. I will remember something that needs to get done, that wasn't on any to-do list, and then I get things taken care of. And now I trust my brain to it's always working in background. You know, I talked last night about the need to worry, and worrying is sort of the secret of my success. There's always something kind of working back there, but it gives me confidence that regardless of what's going to go forward, I know how to prepare for it, and my brain will be my friend and help me do that. I think it's important just interpersonally to know which battles to fight and which battles not to fight. And I think there are women in business who kind of come at it ready for a fight. And some come in wanting to avoid fights at and those are equally difficult for you to move forward. So you kind of have to embrace what's happening, figure out where a line needs to be drawn in the sand, but obviously a fight is the last best option. The working things out together is your best option. This is why I think having a communication degree is invaluable, because you have tools. You have analytic tools to assess the situation, and you've got some strategies. And you may not choose the right one first, but you have a better shot than people who just operate from their gut without that kind of thought. I think really one thing I'm happy about is I've figured out, and I do well, in creating working relationships with men. I work almost exclusively, most of my clients are men. And it is often, brace yourself, an intimate relationship, because we're together working on this goal. There's got to be trust, there's got to be a good give and take, there's got to be the ability to criticize, the ability to praise, the problem solve together, get things done. And so you need to be able to create that kind of intimate relationship without sexualizing it, because they're your client. You've got to be very clear about it. But if you hold back who you are and what kind of engagement that project needs, you're going to fail there too, because you haven't been very fun to work with. It's been a very distant relationship, and I think you want to close that distance. And finally, I think I've learned very recently about the importance of finding and changing networks of women friends. And I think sometimes women keep friends from a very long time ago after they're no longer your friends. You know them, you see them, but you're not functioning in that sort of support relationship with each other anymore. So I found after things started happening to me, and I'm meeting, you know, important people and I'm working with important organizations, that some of my friends thought I was name dropping, or, you know, there was a little bit of, what was the one that just drove me crazy? You know, please don't forget the little people. Put this huge distance between us. But who am I up here and you are perceiving yourself to be down here? I perceive us to be friends. And so I found myself shutting down. And that I couldn't talk about the things that were happening to me for fear that I would be offending them or sort of making them feel unworthy. And then, you know, I just came to realize that means they're not my friend. If I can't share what's happening in my life that's important, and not just that they'll tolerate it, but I need friends who will engage with me, so that we can problem solve some things, we can do those things that are important. So I got involved in a women's networking organization. They invited me to be a part of it, and I can't tell you how important that's been. So here's some name dropping. So there's a former ambassador who is now one of my best friends. The woman who owns the business record who gave me the award, maybe she had a hand in it, is now one of my very good friends. I mean, I now have a connection of successful women, and I know that this sounds haughty. Do you know, it just sounds, well, isn't she all high and mighty? But the reality is, if people cease to be your friends, they're not your friends. You've got to be able to move along. And I'm not saying, you know, file for divorce, but it's just a lesson that I had to learn. I'm getting ready, really, for questions for you. I think I'll just leave with one of the things that I want to be with clients. Again, this is my communication background helping me. I want to be authoritative. That is, I don't want anybody to question that my competency and that I know what I'm doing. And I want to be accessible. And I think women are often, they sort of err on the accessibility side and they lose a bit on the authority side. That the two, there's a tension between the two of them. And that's kind of where those working relationships are really important, to establish your authority and make yourself accessible. So one of the experiences I had with Bloomberg News, and this is, you know, a year after I'd been working with them, is we do a national news poll, and we want to be able to pull out likely voters. And there was not anything coming directly to me, but talk that they didn't like the way that we were screening for likely voters. And I finally said, okay, you need to invite me to Washington. And I brought my little PowerPoint presentation, and I said, I can understand, so I can adapt to my audience. I know where you're coming from. You look at this likely voter screen, and you see these others that are far more complicated. They seem to make some sense to you. How could we be so simple in what we do? And I said, here's my problem with what these others are doing. They make presumptions about who's going to vote that have to do with the investigator, the pollster, and not really reality. And they're going to blind you to change, and here's why we do what it is we do. Oh, by the way, here's my track record. Boom, 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 boom. And they all kind of went, okay, so what we're doing works. You can't deny data. They're a data-driven company. And that's what I said to them. I said, you're a data-driven company. If you have data to show me a way that would be better, I'm very open, and let's have a conversation about it, because I'm always interested in improving. But if it's just different and not better, I don't see a reason for a change. And the person who had been the most troublesome in the background, as everybody was standing up, still a little bit of a pause in the conversation, turned to me and said, you're very persuasive. I said, well, that's what I was going for, so to be done. But I need, you know, you need to know when your authority is being challenged, and then how to step up. And rather than let that fester, I knew that I needed to take action sooner rather than later. But still be accessible. Still say, I'm open. We can do all of this, and have that be genuine. Because if they sense it isn't genuine, you haven't accomplished as much as you think. So I want to throw this out. I'm curious about your experiences, your questions, your dreams, your aspirations, your worries, and any way that I might offer insight or anything you're just curious about. Questions? Yes?
I have a question. So this may be one of those academic people type of questions, but based on the negotiation literature, you find all these things saying, okay, because you were talking about the importance of exuding confidence, right, authority, and I read a lot about especially for women, the issue being if you come across as an authority and with lots of confidence, that you may get some backlash, that you may be not likable and even be considered not persuasive, not competent,
because it looks like a...
working against you. So have you had any practical experience with that? And if yes, how do you handle that? What do you do?
And I have to tell you, sadly, this is something you build over time. So it's perfectly natural that you're going to start out either too confident or not confident enough, and then you have to kind of, as you move forward. But I think confidence by itself is useless without other things that dovetail with it. So as I said, the thing I want to dovetail with my confidence, with my authority, is accessibility. So that people don't, we talked yesterday about interpersonal and social distance. So when you present yourself as an authority, you are creating distance. I am the expert. You are nothing. And a lot of people don't like that.
Yeah.
They don't want to be thought of as nothing. They think they're something. They think they're pretty good. So accessibility is, we're in this together. And let's do this together. I had a client just 2 years ago say to me, as we're just starting to work together and we click, we're going to go off and do this thing for his client, the Gates Foundation. That's pretty prestigious. That's very nice. I'm name dropping again. And he said to me as we were, kind of excited about what we were going to do going forward, he said, Ann Selzer, you have 3 things that make you irresistible. Of course, well, tell me more about that. That's the sentence I like, the way that starts. He said, well, you're smart. I said, okay. He said, you're hardworking. I said, that's true. He said, and you have passion for what you do. So who wouldn't want those 3 things? And I had never really put things together that way. And so I kind of tried it out on some other people, and they'd say, well, there's integrity. And I'd say, I think that's part of being smart. I think you figure out that you're not going to get very far. At least for me, it's not the life I wanted to live. So I'm smart to kind of be that. But you can be smart and hardworking, and if you're not passionate, nobody wants to work with you. And if you're passionate but not smart, I had a woman interview with me a long time ago, and I said, we do some demographic research. And she goes, oh, I love demographics. I went, really? What do you mean by that? And she had nothing to say. She was just showing passion, but it was empty passion, so not smart passion. So I think if you can find something that you're passionate about, that's a good place to build a career. And I do want to start a little movement that I call Plus Math. So do whatever you're passionate about, plus math. And I think that's especially important for women who get messages that math is, well, sometimes it's hard, and then you think if it's hard, I should just opt out early. Hard means get going, try harder. But if you have math, then you have skills other people don't necessarily have. You're going to be promoted easily. Oh, you can be a manager because you can deal with the numbers in the budget. If you're not afraid of the math, you can set yourself apart. One of the things I did 4 years ago was to teach a course of undergraduates in their capstone public relations class, and we did a study. And I made them learn about sampling, and I made them learn about statistics, and I made them learn how to read a crosstab. And they hated every minute of it. I saw my evaluations, and they were low, low, low. I go, really, I was worse than that. But I can't tell you how many emails and calls I've had from former students who are now working in PR firms, and they say, I'm the only one here who knows how to read a crosstab. Well, who do you think is going to get promoted? Who do you think is going to be called in to work on those prestigious projects? They've got a skill that they didn't have before. I got a little off track here, but thank you for the question.
Yeah. Maybe a follow-up to that. I was kind of thinking the same thing, but I'm wondering about if the region of the country or the world that impacts that, because I'm from Wisconsin, and this is more south, of course, than Wisconsin. And even that difference of regionality made me come across as more abrasive and things of which, and I'm a genuine person, but it just was more, I was more Wisconsin. And so many of the things you're talking about, I'm trying to envision, I went to school in Mississippi, I'm trying to envision my Mississippi friends doing business women acting as you suggest. So, yeah, do you have any experience with that?
I can't tell you that I have experience with that, but what I would say is you need to adapt your style to your audience. I think you're still going for authoritative and accessible, but how you enact that, the balance of those things might be different. I think this is the trickiest thing. I don't know that I have a perfect answer, because I think women are constantly, maybe it's a guided missile, that sometimes you're always off target, but you get where you're trying to go. And so maybe you're always a little bit too much on the authority side, maybe you're always somewhat a little bit on the accessible side, but if you're aware of the balance, and that's where I think people lose out, is if they're not aware that these are things I need to balance, if they're not paying attention to how their messages are being received, how they're coming over, how their image is being created. And I'm a data gatherer, I would ask questions, or I would sort of use humor. I would try a number of different things to see. But I do agree. I think this is the most difficult things, and that I see women messing up most commonly, is they either think they have to be too forceful, or they have to be too much of a pussycat, and it's going to be harder for you. It's not impossible, but it's harder if you're too far on one side or the other. So I do have one little sexist story. I knew you hoped I had a sexist story, because coming from my background. That just kind of illustrates that as I stand here today, I'm just saying I've had my share of challenges to be overcome. And there was a client who I still have today, but it started out very rocky. In fact, they would ask me to do a proposal, and then I would never get the bid. And this happened for 3 years in a row, and I finally said, you know what? I will do a proposal for you, because you keep asking, so I keep thinking this is a possibility, but I want an interview with your decision team. And they said, okay. So I got the interview with the decision team, and I was on my game. So I involved them, I engaged them, we talked about things together, we created kind of a vision of what was going to happen, and I got the project. So this is my first project with them. They want me to come to this big presentation. It's a room of 200, 300 people. And the guy, who I think now was the trouble spot, came to introduce me, and this is almost word for word what he said. We started on this polling project 8 years ago, and we went to Washington, D.C. and hired a very famous polling team, and they just did a fantastic job for us. And then we decided 4 years later, well, let's go get people really experts in our field. So we went to Chicago, we hired this guy, and he was just fantastic. We just couldn't have been happier. And this year we decided to go with a local girl. Here's Ann Selzer. Now, yeah, I know. Could he hear what he was saying? I don't think so. But I'm sitting there going, I am going to blow this room away. I am going to just blow them up, because I had to. Number one, I mean, really, what choice did I have? Going, well, I'm the local girl, and here we go. But what better way to make the point of make him look bad, except by being well prepared, which I was, competent and creative in what I was doing. But we never really reached that intimacy. So it's before I probably knew how to do that. But these things happen, and again, if that hits you in your heart, you're going to be you're now maimed. You've been wounded by that. If it hits you in your head and you go, how do I respond to that? Okay, I need to be this. You have to kind of work with your head and go do it. And as I said, there's still a client today. He's gone. So sad. Yes?
Follow-up question to that story, because it sounds a little bit like, so if you're a woman, even if something like that doesn't happen, you still have to be even better. Would you agree with that?
And I find it not productive for me to think about that. I think I have to be my best. And if I focus on me being my best, if I focus on it, it becomes a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. That if you think I'm having to work harder because I'm a woman, then you're going to resent working harder. I'm lucky. I am a lucky girl because I have interesting clients, I get to run my own show, and I get to go and do things that I don't know that I dreamed of when I was a kid, that I can go and do these things. And so I want to keep that going. And my locus of control, I just did it again. Very prominent street in Des Moines named Locust. I hardly ever say the word locust, so I apologize for that. I don't have a locust of control. Is that I'm the one to decide how hard I work. I'm the one to decide, and then I hope I get enough feedback and have enough persuasive power to convince others what I've done. But I don't settle myself for just being good enough. If I go and do a presentation and it's good enough, my assistant will tell you, in the car on the drive home, I'm going, well, B minus, I mean, B plus maybe. She goes, you know, they were happy. They paid the bill. But I want to blow them up. You know, I hope I've done a little bit of blowing up today, I don't know. But I want to give people more than they expected. So I don't know what you expected when you came here. I hope I've given you something that will spark, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but maybe 5 years from now you go, oh yeah, we talked about that. Oh.
You know, I think sometimes when you think about women in business, think about challenges, being in the down position, blah, blah, blah. Have you gotten business that you know you got because you are a woman? So has it served you in a positive way that you know?
There are some businesses that set quotas for their contracts. So they count how many contracts go to woman-owned businesses. So I'm registered with the state as a woman-owned business. You mentioned the San Antonio Public Libraries. They're one. They were very interested in getting me qualified in Texas as a woman-owned business, so that would count as one of their things. I think I may get invited to do a lot of proposals because of that. I have one sitting on my desk when I get back, and the first thing I have to do is take a look and say, do I want to do this? Because if they're only making me propose because I'm a woman-owned business and they're not really engaged with me, then I can spend a lot of time I could spend all of my time writing proposals, but I want to spend my time doing the work. So I think yes, but not too much.
Well, I was just wondering if somebody would say, you know, I really want to work with a woman on this project.
And I've never heard that said.
Really?
I really want to work with you and Selzer on this project.
Yeah.
But
well, that raises another thing. I think as a woman, when you're going through life, I'm sure, you know, things can reinforce that. You never know if something's happening to you because you are Helen Stirk, or because you are a certain reputation, or because you are in a female body, or because you're from Wisconsin. I'm from Oklahoma. So anyway, anyway, it's hard to tell because people don't tell you that.
yeah.
They act on it, but they don't tell you that.
And I guess I think if there's a pattern, then you've got a problem. If there's a singular incident, I wouldn't make too much of it. I would move on. And not, it's easy to get fixated on things, and I've just got more important things to worry about until I think that there's a problem, in which case I'm probably going to bring it up. I'm going to gather data and see if I can verify, confirm, or deny some way, so that I kind of know what that is.